Hey everybody, All Family Games here, and today we are reviewing Crimson Desert, or at least this is just going to be a part one, as I haven't fully completed the game. I'm not even done with the storyline, but just so far, within about almost 100 hours into the game, I wanted to give out at least a part one review, and I will be doing updated reviews as more patches and as more of the game I complete. But in today's video, we're going to be discussing graphics, combat, story, and exploration, and whether or not this game is worth buying. So, graphics. The graphics for Crimson Desert is absolutely stunning. Mind you, this is on the PS5 Pro and cannot be said the same for Xbox base, PS5, and PC. While quality mode is in native 4K and locked at 30 FPS with ultra ray tracing enabled, quality mode does add a depth to the world and is visually stunning, but locked at 30 FPS takes away from immersing yourself in the open world. Performance mode is rendered in 1080p and upscaled to 4K with high ray tracing. In performance mode, the game looks visually appealing, and the smooth 60 plus FPS adds immersion around the world, but however is interrupted by frequent screen tearing. Screen tearing can be solved by enabling VSync but drops visuals in areas. However, after ample hours into the game, you begin to ignore the screen tearing and it becomes an afterthought. Balance mode is rendered out in 1440p and upscaled to 4K, hitting around 40 plus FPS with high ray tracing. Balance mode is a good medium for acquiring FPS and slightly better visuals. However, I find myself playing mostly in performance or quality mode, swapping between the two frequently during certain adventures. Combat is very satisfying. You can definitely see and feel the weight of each sword strike and shield block. The finishers are brutal and satisfying. The abyss gears you acquire can be socketed to your weapons and armor and can change combat and visuals drastically. From shooting crows out of your weapon to having Spectral Knight shoot out from finishers can definitely add a satisfying and powerful feel to combat. However, even with all this, the combat still has its cons, as it is clunky and unresponsive at times, finding it very difficult to do combos or even combat certain bosses. For example, I found myself becoming frustrated a lot when trying to activate Blinding Flash, then going into Blinding Flash finisher, as quite a few times my character doesn't do Blinding Flash and just wants to do light attacks. This is also said for jumping, as instead of jumping, he just stands there, which there's a lot of boss fights in here that require you to jump, and instead of Cliff jumping, he just stood there even though I was tapping the jump button. Same is said for weapon swapping. There is a skill that allows you to do fast weapon swapping mid fight, and instead of swapping weapons, the character just uses the bow. This unresponsiveness usually happens with multiple button inputs to perform one move, where instead of doing this unique move, it is often prioritized by basic combat moves, which becomes very frustrating and more often than not resulting in me losing the fight. The lock on mechanic is also broken, as more times than not it does not stay locked on and is very difficult to swap between enemies. This is especially frustrating when facing multiple enemies, as your character wants to focus on the one target and doesn't want to switch until they are hit. The camera for combat becomes the most difficult enemy, as most of the time I'm fighting the camera angle instead of being locked on to my target. So, more often than not, I can't see my target or what he is doing because the camera decided to go elsewhere instead of staying behind my character and following the enemy. However, all in all, the combat is still fun and satisfying, and it truly is. The story. Now, this is where a lot of people are complaining about the story, but I also feel like as if they didn't take time out to actually get that far into the story, they end up just dropping it because they're like, the narrative sucks or whatever else like that. But I definitely want to touch base on the story because I feel like this may end up swaying your opinion just a little bit. As I feel like people just did not take the time out to let the story progress. Mind you, like in order to even get to like chapter 4, you're putting in already 20 plus hours. But story is more expressed as a roller coaster. As for the first 4.5 chapters, the story can kind of fall flat and send you lackluster quests like traveling 2,200 meters to talk to one person, then travel 2,200 meters back to talk to someone else, or go find my sheep and so forth. However, halfway through chapter 4 is when the story picks up and you start getting pulled into the story and are wanting more. Cutscenes are good and choreographed very well. Cliff, the main character, is better described as a man with few words and more action, which honestly feels like I'm playing as medieval John Wick. A man with few words, but is a badass fighting numerous of enemies and liberating entire fleets by himself. The fight choreography for the cutscenes, as you are seeing on screen at the moment, is absolutely peak. From the start of the boss fight to the end of them, the characters feel like a badass. The choreography for the fight scenes just pull you in and leave you wanting to watch Cliff be more awesome. This is especially noticeable when fighting the Reed Devil, which is an early boss in the game and quite frankly has a great backstory, which reminds me of the Red Baron from Witcher 3. If not paid close enough attention, it can easily be overlooked. However, take your time and pay close enough attention, it can leave you with a holy crap moment and wanting more. Everything after chapter 4 really picks up and pulls me into the story and wanting more, but however, feels like the story is pulled into two separate directions at least as so far as I'm only in like chapter 10. That being said, uh be patient. And sure enough, after ample hours, you'll be rewarded with a more satisfying story that'll pull you in and keep you. But keep in mind that's after 20 plus hours. Just keep that in mind. That's after 20 plus hours. Exploration. Exploration is extremely satisfying. Setting out on your own adventure, whether that be because you saw an interesting location or overheard the NPCs talking about a certain item, then setting out on your own quest to find said item, whether that be horseback, on foot, climbing, swimming, etc. Uh, but it's satisfying. When you do find the item you're looking for, and more often than not, it is also satisfying and rewarding once you do find that item. Especially when out exploring, you can come across situations like bandits or NPCs who is being robbed or someone needing help. However, exploring does have its quirks, like climbing a steep slope can a lot of times be irritating as Cliff doesn't know if he should be climbing or walking up the slope and will result in him sliding down. This can be said for rooftops or buildings and going up mountains. A perfect example would be this giant ice spire, sorry, I can't talk for some odd reason, I found and decided to explore it. Mind you, there are stairs leading to the top of the spire, but found myself plummeting to the bottom because Cliff slipped on the ice and would launch himself over the railings, which became frustrating as I had to restart my ascent of the stairs again because of one slip. Like I literally had to do this like 10 times. It was becoming really irritating. I was like, Cliff, just stop slipping, bro. Literally stop. And it was super frustrating, man. Um, I will admit, like getting encountering the dragon and like more of the mythical beasts was like way later on in the story. Like I didn't start seeing like a lot of mythical creatures until I hit about around chapter 8 or 9, and then that's when like dragons, harpies, and more of the mythical creatures started coming in. Like said right here, this was like chapter 9, halfway through chapter 9, or the beginning of chapter 10. Right here, this scene was, and I was like, man, that takes really long, like into the game. But other than that, I'm absolutely loving this game. But all in all, Crimson Desert is a fun game, and I am enjoying the game thoroughly. Even with the cons, which can be patched, Crimson Desert is visually stunning and is fun, and I highly recommend people trying it. Just remember, be patient, and I promise you, after a while, you'll start to see why players like myself are enjoying Crimson Desert.